All right, the plot thickens as we get closer and closer to April 12th. What's going on, everybody? It's another edition of Sportsnet's NHL Power Rankings. Nick Alberga joined alongside Rory Boylen. A different type of tier this week, a top 10, Rory.
A ranking, straight ranking of the top 10. There's a bit of confusion. We heard you. We saw you in the comments. We heard you. We weren't really ranking the teams properly last week, so we're going to go to a straight 1 to 10 ranking, and you can tell me where I went wrong, Nick.
Everywhere, 1 through 10. We'll start at number 10. You have the Toronto Maple Leafs. How about that?
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of people that are going to be hate-free for this. But you know what? These are dynamic rankings. They're going to change, and there's a weight towards what have you done for me lately. And the fact is the Toronto Maple Leafs have been slow lately. And if this is a ranking that is sort of, if you're at the top, it's a team you don't want to face. I think Toronto, if you were picking a spot where you wanted to face the Maple Leafs, it's right now. They're struggling. They're going through a cold spell. They lost a couple to the Vancouver Canucks. They let the Winnipeg Jets back into the race for the top of the North Division there with losing 2 out of those 3 games. Questions about their defense, questions about their goaltending, like these same questions that we've always had sort of about the Maple Leafs are seeping in. Now, I personally think they're going to be fine. I think they're going to win this division in the regular season. It wouldn't shock me if they come back really strong from this little break here. But for now, the Toronto Maple Leafs are a bit of a struggling team. So they have to fall down the rankings, and they're at number 10.
Fair enough. Speaking of being humbled, Thursday night, whatever that was, the Minnesota Wild absolutely demolished by the Colorado Avalanche, who, this not just in, they're going to have a monster second half. I think it goes without saying. But how do you feel about Minnesota, and why are they in your top 10?
Well, Minnesota they're a really, really interesting team, like much different than what we've gotten used to. An exciting team led by some rookies and young players. Like most of their top 5 scorers are 23 and under. A great season. I think the season that's flying under the radar here for the Minnesota Wild is Joel Eriksson-Ek. Offensively and defensively, he's really coming out. Everybody knows about Kirill Kaprizov. He's just absolutely electric. And here comes Kaapo Kähkönen too, and he's been on fire for this team. Cam Talbot has been just as good in the crease too, so really steady there. A good blue line as they've always had. So now that they're getting to be a bit more of a dynamic team with that kind of scoring punch, they're hitting a different gear, and so they're a team to watch. But as they showed against the Colorado Avalanche, they're really not in the cup contenders, but they're a team that we've got to watch, especially heading up to this trade deadline.
Yeah, on Kaapo Kähkönen, I'm sure a lot of people play fantasy hockey, read my rookie radar going into this season and found Kähkönen and took him because he's been money in the bank so far this season. From there, we move on to number 8, a team I will agree with you on. I think they actually should be higher. That's the Winnipeg Jets.
Fair enough. I mean, Winnipeg, the one thing I don't like about Winnipeg is that their defense hasn't really changed. They give up way too many quality shots in low on Connor Hellebuyck, which Connor Hellebuyck can make up for that. And that's not really an issue that is going to bury them. But you do wonder if he gets tired, if you have a bad run of games at the wrong time. You would like for that defense to be a little bit better, which, again, maybe they pick up a Matthias Ekholm. Maybe they pick up a Travis Hamonic if they don't want to deal with quarantine across the border. There are ways for them to improve that blue line. I would expect them to do it by the deadline, and then we start looking at this team differently. But they can play fast, they can play big, they have great goaltending, which is, as we all know, the X factor in the playoffs that can carry you through a lot. So I do like a lot about Winnipeg, and the fact that they came out looking so good from that Toronto Maple Leafs series, now just 2 points behind them for the division lead, have to give them the nod. They're a team that's shooting up here fast.
Let's do some quick hitters here, 5, 6, 7. We'll start with Florida at 7, and the Islanders, who lose Anders Lee, their captain this week, and then Carolina, number 5.
Yeah, Florida, kind of like Minnesota, like still kind of seeing what they are here. They haven't got the same infusion of youth that is impacting them, but Sergei Bobrovsky is coming back. The team defense has been much improved over last year. Sasha Barkov, count him as your Selke leader probably at the halfway mark. Maybe should be getting some Hart Trophy consideration, at least among the top 5. I don't think he's a favorite to win it or anything like that. But with those kind of leaders, sometimes forget, Joe Quenneville coaches this team, and he's had a monster success in his career. So he's bringing out the best from this team. Again, a team to watch at the deadline. We'll see what they do. We'll see what they think of themselves and if they're buyers or whatnot. But I think they're a team that is much better than we expected, and they're showing that they've got some staying power.
Yes. So Carolina, the Islanders, how do you feel about those two?
The Islanders, again, like you hit it there with Anders Lee out, they've got to get in the market for a score. We've seen Kiefer Bellows move up the lineup in Lee's absence, and he's shown pretty well. But is that going to stay for the rest of the year? We'll see. Lou Lamoriello talked about, maybe not having to replace Lee specifically on that top line if Bellows keeps it up, and they can find another way to improve their forwards. We'll see. But I think they've got to be in the market for the same kind of players that any rental team like the Toronto Maple Leafs are in on. Taylor Hall, Kyle Palmieri right down the road, don't have to deal with quarantine. There are ways. I think they're going to come out and they're going to do that. Carolina, honestly, I wanted to put them higher than 5. It's just the 4 teams ahead of them are playing so well lately, but Carolina is a team that could be easily top 3. I love the Canes. And again, that's another team that could add at the deadline. And the one concern for me remains their goaltending, but it's been okay so far to this point.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. Alex Nedeljkovic has been a brilliant story since Peter Mrazek went down. 1 through 4, all wagons in my opinion. Tampa, Vegas, Washington, and Colorado, I think, hasn't found its gear, but Nathan MacKinnon is getting in his stride lately.
Yeah, and honestly, when I was looking at Carolina, the team that I was kind of debating moving out of the top 3 for them, or top 4 for them, was Washington, but Washington's just on fire lately here. Yeah. Winners of 6 straight. I know the analytics side of things doesn't favor them too much, but they're just always there, right? And now they're catching fire. I think that this is a team that you just have to consider among the top cup contenders in the league. Colorado, you mentioned it earlier, like these guys are out shooting opponents like crazy here recently. And not just even recently, like they always do that. And the more goals are going to come, they're going to start steamrolling their opponents. They're going to be up here they might be taking a run at Tampa Bay for number 1 here before. Philip Grubauer has been awesome in net for them. We all know about Nathan MacKinnon. Maybe they even added the deadline, which would be really, really scary. Terrific young blue line. They're catching fire, so Colorado's got to be here. But to me, the top, there is clearly a top tier here. It's those top 2 teams, Tampa Bay, Vegas. Tampa Bay might even be in a tier of their own. There's no weakness in that team. They don't have a bad stretch in their schedule. They don't have a bad spot in their lineup. They're so good, you'd think that they would be a buyer at the trade deadline, but where are they going to improve? What are they going to do? Like, they're already going to make the best post-trade deadline acquisition when Nikita Kucherov comes back in the playoffs. So if you're already the best team in the league and you're going to get one of the best players back at some point, I don't really know if you need to add anything.
Yeah, that's a scary thing to me. No Kucherov, and it just doesn't matter. They continue to find prospects, which is just surreal to me. The next guy comes up, scores a goal, and then so on and so forth. It's crazy.
And who could really shine with more minutes is Matthew Joseph. That's a guy who has always shown good underlying numbers, just doesn't have a lot of minutes because there's nowhere for him to move up into that lineup. But he's having a pretty good season. And that's a guy, perfect example of if he found his way to another team, he would probably explode, kind of like Carter Verhaeghe is with the Florida Panthers this year.
Yeah, my next guy is Ross Colton, too, which we've seen a bit so far this season. And surprise, he scores a goal. Lastly, this part of the show, I get to pick you apart. I won't contest with, your top 10 here. Philadelphia struggling. They can't make a save. The St. Louis Blues, they're injured. I can't include them. But I think you're crazy not including the Boston Bruins on this list. I think people just continue to sleep on that team. I know they're going through a rough patch. They lost Carlo. Tuukka Rask is out. I think Boston's going to be a top 5 team again. How do you feel? Yeah, definitely. I mean, when you get to number 10, there's a couple of teams there that you're having a tough time. You could even make a case for Pittsburgh to be in that top 10. But the leader of that kind of, first in, first out group there is Boston, for sure. But you kind of hit on the factors that kept them out for me this week. It's just, if you put Boston in, Toronto is going to be out. I don't think it's fair to And then Sportsnet goes down.
And I don't think it's fair to just put those 2 teams in and take out a Minnesota or Florida because they're not used to being there. We've got to get used to the idea of Minnesota and Florida and those type of teams being among the top 10 right now until they show us something different. Because Toronto has showed us a slow stretch. Boston's showing us a slow stretch right now. Those teams have not. So, again, these are going to be dynamic. So maybe Boston finds their way up. Wouldn't be surprised if they do. They could be a top 5 team by the time this season is out. But as of right now, I don't see what the case is for putting Boston in the top 10 ahead of some of these teams.
All right, well, agree to disagree. Okay, well, there's the name of the segment right there, Rory. Thanks for this.
Have a good one, Nick.
That's Rory Boylen. I'm Nick Alberga. This has been another edition of Sportsnet's NHL Power Rankings.